in which we will learn what is the actual process through which you can start and create your own logo. Now, if you are a budding graphic designer, you will more or less sooner or later come across a request to create a logo design. And it's not that difficult. It has been a process that has been done for a lot of times and through a lot of different processes. In this video, I will take you through the process that I prefer the most. Of course, this is not the only process. You can always try and change around what you would want to do first and then what works for you. Now, make sure that all of these things that you're doing is as a reference and you can replicate or you can recreate your own version of the same thing. For the benefit of your understanding, I will work on a single logo with you guys alongside, and let's say how about creating a logo for a brand that makes fizzy drinks. And in fact, let's just call it fizzy drinks. Okay, I think sounds good. We'll try with this. So you can always keep on seeing what I am doing while you follow the process that I take you through. So are you ready for it? Before you get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can follow for more content. Breakdown. Iconography can be done by breaking down the logo idea into smaller pieces like a visual and a text. For the visual cue, you could identify specific elements such as brand identity, values, probably the product or the services that the brand is going to be providing. Now you could do this by creating abstract shapes or even something very specific to the brand itself. You could also choose a symbolic representation that represents probably visual cues, abstract shapes or elements that the brand stands for. So if it's probably like a luxury brand, you could have stars and you can have shining content in the logo itself. Make sure that you aim for simplicity and clarity. Now, if you complicate your logo, it might get difficult to change it into different formats, present it on different screens and so on. So what you want to do is keep the logo as simple and as clear as possible. If you try to make it more intricate, that could work, but you could lose out a lot of intricacies when you're working on a specific type of design. For instance, if I have a very intricate jewelry design, it might not work very well when you're trying to represent it probably on a low resolution paper or probably a low resolution printout. So you might want to keep all of those things in mind from the very beginning. These details could get lost when they're getting scaled down. As the next step, you should think of text. Now, most logos ideally have a text alongside that could represent or that could present the brand name itself. For instance, Louis Vuitton has LV, but Coca-Cola has the entire text as the logo itself. This could be an option in case you do not have a very specific idea or a specific virtue that the brand stands for. Now, when you're doing this, you could think of using the entire brand names like Coca-Cola or by just the initials like LV. In that case, you should keep in mind what sort of iconography or what sort of stylization should you want for the logo itself. If it's an easygoing brand, you might want something curvy and something smoother. And if it's a luxury brand, you might want to think of very luxurious elements that could be serifs maybe, or it could even be very futuristic elements if it's a very modern and elegant brand that you're talking about. Consider typography that stands with your brand's personality and resonates with your target audience. How can you do that? You can determine the textual elements of the logo such as slogan, initials or the text itself. Figure out the length and the composition of the logo with the design elements. Then the typography selection has to be made. This could be done by understanding the positioning and the styling of the brand itself. You should make sure that the text is nonetheless readable. Then moving forward, you could think of branding and customization. You could choose a different type of text. You could change specific elements of the logo itself or of the text itself to enhance its visual appeal and enforce the visual identity. Finally, with both of this text and the icon itself, you need to keep in mind that they could be played around with. There could be various options in which you can keep the logo and the text. Now, if you're creating for different sizes, this might come in very handy where the logo iconography is small and the text is big, or vice versa. All of this needs to be kept in mind that both of these things have to work together with harmony. The better the harmony, the better your logo will look like. How can you create this visual harmony? You need to strike a balance between the alignments and the placement of these elements together. In case you're keeping an icon, a text and a subtitle, maybe that could be one way of keeping all the elements aligned. Of course, you need to keep on thinking of these things as and when you process. Then you need to think of integration of both of these things. Try different layouts, alignments, and probably different stylizations, so that all of this can impact visually and make the logo memorable. Finally, if you are creating multiple variations, make sure there is consistency between all of these styles. Everywhere that you're using the logo and the text, it should have a sort of similar structure so that different variations of the logo do not look different from each other. By carefully analyzing and synthesizing these components during the breakdown phase, you as a designer can create a foundation that works really well for the brand's message and can communicate the virtues that it stands for. This will help you make sure that the first presentation with your client actually goes well. Style. Now when you're thinking of style, you might need to think of a couple of elements. The first one is color. For color, you need to understand the brand's identity and personality. For instance, and I've already mentioned this before, if you're working for a tech company, it might want a very technologically modern and stylized or elegant format. So in that case, you might to keep the colors on a minimal side. On the other hand, if you're working for something more punchier, you might want highly saturated colors such as popping red, very bright green, or different shades of blue. So you can think of both of these techniques in which when you're thinking of stylization by color. Make sure that finally it represents the personality of the brand that you're creating it for. Then comes the values. Values is basically the emotions or the core brand values that the brand stands for. This could have impact on colors, such as a very calm company could have some sort of a blue color. A very highly energetic company can have probably an exciting red or an exciting yellow. Now both of these things could be dependent on what the brand stands for. If it stands for royalty, maybe choose a purple color. If it stands for some sort of a progress or eco-friendly products, that could represent by green color, right? So you might want to consider the kind of color and the theming that the brand stands for and use that accordingly in your design. Of course, I'm not telling you to create only a single color, but make sure that the major content of the logo itself can be represented through this color. Next, you should think of your target audience. If your target audience and your demographics is not clear, you might not fit the entire logo according to the requirements. So choose hues that resonate with the intended audience and perceptions. Once you've decided the color, next move on to the font for the text. Should make sure that the text is legible. That is a priority. The chosen font should be readable at different sizes and at different mediums through the logo, through which the logo is going to be represented. Then comes scalability. Opt for fonts which are scalable and do not lose clarity or detail when you are applying this on different properties such as signage, business cards, email headers, or anything of that sort. Make sure you are sticking to the brand tone. I've already explained this to you that for a luxury brand, you might want an elegant serif font that conveys sophistication, and a startup might want a very elegant or a very modern and sleek look. So you need to keep that in mind. Now the next option that you might want to think of at this stage is to see if you want a very abstract logo or a very literal logo. For instance, you could think of Google Chrome, right? Now Google Chrome has the branding, the colors that Google has by itself, but the Chrome icon does not have a specific understanding or a symbolism. It is an abstract symbol. Or you could go for something very specific, for instance Apple or OnePlus. You could see exactly what they are saying in the logo itself. So you might want to consider this when you are creating the logo. Now understand this. Abstract imagery can be open to interpretation and can convey complex ideas very simply by shapes or patterns without a direct or a specific representation. This offers flexibility and creativity in interpretation. On the other hand, if you're thinking of a literal design, now that represents tangible objects, concepts, or ideas directly. These ideas are way more straightforward and immediately recognizable. You could use them to associate a product or a service directly, and they represent to probably even the values that you can stand for. Now, when you're considering all of these style elements of a logo design, it is essential to make sure that there is balance between creativity, identity, and what the audience perceives. Designers can create logos that can effectively communicate the essence of the brand and resonate with the target audience if they start thinking of all of this from the get-go. Brainstorming. Now, I generally prefer 2 or 3 different ways in the age of AI when I'm brainstorming logo designs. The first and the most obvious ones is to start thinking of references that can be directly understood and can be replicated into a fresh logo design. For this, I use Google. Now, you can always go up to Google and start searching for similar logos. It has a vast number of options and images so that you can take references from it and recreate your own version. Of course, Google is not the only one. You could always land on different websites from Google that can also give you certain different ideas. As I said, what you need to keep in mind are different variations of what you're looking for, and that is why the next step is going to be using something called ChatGPT. Of course, ChatGPT is just one example. You could use any other LLM for your benefit. Even Gemini or Google Bard is another option that could give you certain examples. Now with ChatGPT, you can brainstorm a lot of different variations and styles for what might fit your brand and brand personality for the logo. You can always think of different symbolizations, different visual representations that can help you ideate or plan the logo design itself. And then the next thing that you could do is go to a generative AI website such as Midjourney or Leonardo. The one that I frequently use is Leonardo. And with this, I can generate different types of icons that could work or that could represent the stylization that I want. Now, my intention is not to use any of these logos directly because they do not have the sort of flexibility that a AI-based logo will be able to, or an Illustrator-based logo will be able to give me. That means placement of text, different variations and different customizations for the logo itself. These are just for brainstorming and picking out the right variation. I can draw it. I generally start by creating a sketch of the final logo that I would want. Now, I use an iPad for drawing now. Earlier it used to be a pen and paper, or it could even be a paper and a pen and a sketchbook, whatever works for you the best, so that you can start ideating. You can even take up a marker and start planning it out on a whiteboard if you want to, right? So all of that is simple, and that is something that you can do to keep your ideas or to bring your ideas and in a simple design format. Now, we are not looking to make this the perfect logo by hand because that is something that we will do in the next step. Whenever you're creating a sketch, focus on trying to represent the idea as clearly. Now, what you might want to do is understand or create a simple imagery, and you can identify or take feedback from the client itself and then proceed with the final design. But make sure that you explore as much as possible because this is the easiest way of ideating and trying out different options. When we convert a photo or an image of these different variations of the style that you have taken into a vector-based format. Vector-based format is of course necessary when you're creating a logo, and that is why you should probably be doing it in an Illustrator or any other vector-based software. The intention of keeping this vector-based is so that you can play around with the size as and when necessary. Now, to create this vector, I will take a picture of the sketch and create or start to draw over it. You could go across different variations in which you can create lines and curves and all of that in the logo itself, so that your logo represents the kind of style that you're going for and can give you the sort of clarity that is necessary. Once you're done with the creation part, then comes the coloring and finally the placement of the text. Make sure you try across with different variations as we have already discussed. Now, through this process, what you have just done is converted your brainstorm or your initial idea into a visual format that can now be represented. Once all of this gets approved across through different variations and different stylizations that you do and the different feedback that you receive, the final step would be to export it into multiple formats. Export. When I am exporting a logo, I generally prefer it in 3 different formats. The first one, of course, is the Illustrator format or AI. Now, this is most useful when I need to play around with the logo in the future for different stylizations. For instance, today I might be representing the entire brand in a purple color, but for instance on a World Environmental Day, the brand might want a monochrome or a green sort of color for the logo itself. In that case, having this AI file is absolutely necessary. It will make sure that the brand values are still stuck to, the colors can get changed easily. Then the next variation that I do keep in mind is an SVG format. Now SVG format is a scalable vector graphics that can be provided to anybody who might want to use this logo without being able to change the properties of it. Now SVG is one format in which you might need a lot of scaling and you might need a professional to use it properly if he is going to be using it on web development like HTML or CSS. And then again, I also export it into the third format, which is a PNG format. PNG is generally a lossless format, and I can save images or I can save this particular logo without a background. So it can be applied on different places directly without a white square as it might appear. And that is what my process is for exporting or creating the entire logo. Now, of course, as I said, your process might vary. You might have an initial brainstorming followed by a breakdown of what you would want, depending on how you want it and how the client reacts to it. So you need to make sure that all of these things are taken care of. But all of this being said and done, the major part still stays the same. That is the design. The design could have a brainstorming session with pen and paper or a sketch, and then finally getting converted into a vector format in a Illustrator or in any other vector-based software. So you keep that part in mind and keep on practicing with Illustrator for a good precision that you might want for your logos. Anyhow, I hope all of this was useful for you. And my final logo looks something like this. You might want to create your own variation, probably for a different brand or for a different requirement, and see how it works for you. That is all that I have for this video, and I hope to see you in another one. We will explore more about design in this channel called Design Hub. Before you close, make sure that you like this video, share it with your designer friend or somebody who you think needs to understand how the logo creation is done. And finally, subscribe to this channel because I will be creating more such content that will come in handy. Till then, bye bye.